Hello and welcome. It is the 15th day of January 2020. My name is Derek. This is the Money Charts channel, like where always all bets trades and of the like. Well, that's within each's own risk and their own reward. For myself, risk reward management's always job at numero uno. Okay. The line at around the 13.95 handle. I drew it in yesterday's video. And we're just 1 minute time frame as I'm doing this. It could happen ASAP. And if it happens, well, so be it. That's take a look at this with multiple levels. This thing broke out above this resistance, and we'll see it more clearly when we go vroom on these time frames. But just when it breaks key levels, concise move, and this was to a key point, not with a line not shown. And from that key point, it's been noticeable many lower highs and lower lows with one decent failed breakout that would have just recently happened. And when we look at this within the 18, well, one, I'd like to see it on the next. Well, we'll go to the 4 in a second, but we know that the 18 in here is, well, it failed it. We'll see that in a bit. And within that, this level of support here, it went through, decent size clutterbuck move. This should ASAP move down. And the volatility here going from like 16 down to like 14.20. If you think of a stock has just went from $16 to 14.25 or something. That's like a differential of like 170. This is over a 10% move in just a couple hours or so. This is like 1,700 hours right now. We're just past the 20-hour mark. Yada, yada, yada. So 4 minute term time frame. Now we got some of these lines in here. And we can see it came to previous high, previous resistance. And now is it coming back to where we came from? There's that failed break of getting above the 18 highs, then pulling down on the lows, 2 periods of pausing. Now it's breaking down and doing its thing within such. When you look at this on the 15, it's still progressively holding very well when we look at these higher lows. We got this one here. This one in here, and now, and within it we have these little bits here, and within this to what we're now making this one here, highs and lows known after the fact. But we're knowing whatever this low is going to be it. Thus, this is a high. It's after the fact. It's not holding on this 18. It's already came back to where we came from with this support hitting this level of resistance, which pretty much is. That interesting point. You go to high, but now if you can support this is most certainly a key level. Because if it doesn't support this area in here, then we're looking on this to be this failed term breakout, and now we can start talking about filling this empty space on the downside. On the single-hour term time frame, it's still holding up very well within this 18 average. Obviously, having a support test right now on the low end. And if it's unable to rally from this point on, get above the 15 number, and at least hold the 13.7-ish hit around here, then that'd be band flattening out, neutralizing the situation, moving this more of a sideways banner, and then of course breaking down. Well, we need to see 18s that would be below here. I'll go 3 hour, 8 hours, so on. Even the 3 hours well extended if it breaks below this. But this is a possible area for support, but I'd be looking for something a little bit better than that. And we can see it's just been having a tremendous run. It's just when you have moves like this thing could have decent sized falls at any time, and it can continue its momentum. Sideways actions can come into play. There's so many different possibilities, but volatility is most certainly the name of this game. We do have high volume in here, but it's only a little higher than this, and we might have, and I say this because volume can be a big indicator. Before, when all of this stuff was going on, like beforehand, everything was just yada yada, like okay, whatever, nothing's like, even this volume's like, okay, it's nothing to write home about. But you can say that this is to write home about if you use it for that expression. And now we have follow through with bigger one, but we could have 170% day with volume triple or quadruple this. And, we could have bigger volume there after the fact. There's still no evidence yet that there is any sort of top into play. Such a monster move, because when I look at technical analysis within this 18, it's very easy if it's not too big. And in cryptos, that's just the way it is, and I like it that way too. But now that you have a move like this, so what's the justified must hold? Because normally, when you have a bottom of any sort, you're below the 18, then you get a little bit above, say something like the 91 handle or whatever. Well, now I just want to hold this area where we come from, 61.8, and that's pretty much what the calculation I think is going to be. So I think it's time to adjust the Fibonacci. I haven't calculated this yet. We're going to go from this low to right out what the high happens to be. It would, of course, be recalculated if new highs come into play. So that low, as I can see on the top of the screen, says 53.12. So I'm going to get my calculator up and enter that number, and it'll be a 5-digit number, 5311, close enough. And we have a high in here of 16,067. And any lines that just happen to hit would be just a little lucky. So 76.4 is a 23.6 down move, coming in at 12,373. I literally didn't get it in time. And I should have kept the lines and just moved it, but I can just do it this way, I think. And I wrote that wrong. 12,373. Okay, so that would be the next area. I would have to think if there would be any type of decent moves lower, and then we'll just put the next numbers in. Breaking 10.0527 would be an area. Oh, that was close. Very close. And the next one is 8106. And one of the things I like to say is, or see, look for, is, do these levels coincide with any key areas? The answer to 8106 is yes. The answer to 10, I mean, this coincides here. And then I'm going to have to look at the short term again to see how it works on the way up. But if, again, we have failure on the shorter term, all this type of stuff, and we break down, I'll be looking, and then you shouldn't even need to calculate. You get this, or rather, if you don't calculate Fibonacci, just like, okay, if we break down, well, where was the last key low? Well, it was between 12,673 and like 11,88. Well, that's the exact same range on the Fibonacci kind of deal. And then, if that doesn't hold and we break down below, you get a concise move from there, so on and so forth. But the uptrend, of course, still in play. I've been taking a lot of time talking about Dash, and let's move on to the next one. And Bitcoin, I mean, it's the major one. Usually I start off within it. But after what we had in here, about a half a dozen days of going sideways from this move where we resisted this previous area of support, there was an opportunity this day to break down, even a small one here, but it recovered in both situations, getting above this level of resistance in yesterday's session, and so far, or today's session rather, and so far in today's session continuing to keep this move moving up a bit. So this is a very, very good. Oh, for the weekly session, this is a weekly chart. So throw that all aside. So after last week's gain, so far this week, yes, it is it's moving it towards this. Definitely the band is now flat in that sense, and it's got the potential, if it goes breaking above here, that this thing could just keep on going for a decent amount. You're at a spot where we've made this high way, way, way back when. We'll call it the all-time highs. The higher low to whichever one's way back when. I don't even need to show it. It's higher. And then lower high. But how lower? Well, it was a good rally. I mean, it had a decent room of empty space, but only so much. It filled most of it from here to here. 76.4 is what it filled, piercing above. And so about 78% of it. And then from here to here, it hasn't given that much back. So when I see that, and yes, it's symmetrical, higher lows and lower highs in the primary uptrend, that in this situation, it could get very interesting, is what I'm saying, on a break of the resistance, given how I see it being played out. Or rather how it is playing out on that. So let's transition into the daily term, where there's the resistance break in here. How we followed through in this. Well, today's session, it just went sideways, and it's giving it a little bit back. It's doing the same thing, down just a little bit, but not really. And if it's gonna come, I mean, this come down here, this just works out perfect. That the rising 18 average is coinciding with this, what would be the next key level. There's two levels that has to really hold. I mean, it can go one and then two. I mean, 61.8% from key low to key high is always where it's going to come in at. But because of this holding into play, when we look at things short term, if there's ever anything stating, especially if it stays and holds above 82 area, that you see short term bull market situations, that this thing is very live because the daily time frame is in such a good turnaround state on the bullish time frame. On the 3 hour, we can see what I like to refer as a double top, and that is just simply that. Really, two U's, V's in that spot, completed. Some people like to call this a double top, and this is just me retest a previous high. So we got one and then two. So we've just made it down to the neckline or the area for this point, and it's been holding this on an amazing level. This was a success here. It had a decent move below here, definite noticeable trend, but filling only a little bit of this empty space from here with good support at this point. And from this level, it had a longer sideways correction beforehand, but primary trend has been higher. If this needs to correct, then again, those levels that I talked about before is what's going to come into play. And to break shorter term levels, we know this is established level. And I also know that if I go to these shorter term time frames, this single period's in a down move. It's got a lot of work most likely, because I'm going to be looking at bear market territory when I go to these shorter term time frames. 1 hour, it's just starting to break down. It tried to before. It tried to right here, but not really. I mean, it was just higher lowing this. And can it hold and stay above it? Well, this happened, uptrend. There's reaching the 18 highs. There's the highs, yes. And then it tried to extend the gains, retesting this, having a move down the lows. Okay, successful. Now here's where this thing looks like it's breaking out, but it didn't. And it didn't do this, that supporting the 18. So that's an interesting spot. This tells me that the momentum just may be over within this time frame. This trend line, whatever, looking to break. Maybe not, but again, I need to see on the shorter term time frames some sort of indication that this isn't going to keep failing through, because it could look weak for me to say that the time is right. On the 15-minute, well, this is something I need to see get above, hold above this 18 average, and right now it's just crashing down below it, retesting this low. It's already, this support here represented this level of resistance. We can see that this period, it breaks down below, comes back, now it's breaking down again. So now we're looking at, why haven't we hit 85.60 yet? Because it's the action of doing it is probably going to do it very soon. And whether it finds much support there, how it works, I would have no idea. Again, to get this thing going in a bull market, yeah, I think the 15 is where it's at. This is a time frame I would think if it shows momentum on this, but it looks like it's given back some of its moves on the short-term time frame. And out of curiosity, I just looking at Bitcoin Cash on the 15 with a lot of periods. Just to sum up what the volatility really is all about. In here, I mean, not much, just in this little range, sideways action. You can see in here that this was able to support this level of resistance. Had a little bit of extra volume here, but the volume, of course, and this is normal. When you have these big kick-ass moves, you're going to do it. And then monstrous volatility, when you can see here, coming down from, again, think of a stock market on an intraday. Here you go, $36 a share to like 41, back down to like 38, up to like 40. And this is a high, large cap, I'll call it stock, because you just trade the same way. I mean, it is, but it's not a stock, but it's like the same thing if you're trading this or the market. It's all numbers game. And in this case, the numbers you see going from like 40 down to like 37, under 37, like a 10% move, and all of these little swings, and it's just still continuing now. We can see all of these tests in here that, how do you think, I mean, why do I'm bearish on this? I'm not betting it, but I don't think there's much of a chance it's going to get above here short term, and I think there's a high chance it's going to come down here short term as I'm looking at this, just by viewing this on the 15-minute term time frame. When we look at something like this on the 3-hour, we got a band flattening out, but that gives it possible momentum where it might not break down, but still, the fact that it had this move up to the highs like this, yeah, and just like I mentioned with Bitcoin on the 15-minute time frame, if I want to see it get going, I need to see this thing clearly get above in here, because if this thing rallies up to this point, it can very easily reject it at this point. You see the 18 flatten, start to have a little bit of action below, even if it's just a small amount, sort of like, again, something like this where it's just going to fill maybe, and all it does is come down to here, and that could be a decent probability. But the volatility is so big that these moves can happen, most certainly can happen very, very fast. I know there's not much data on here, and I can get it easily enough, again, but I really don't need to for what I want to talk about. And that, of course, again, within the 18 from the low, you get above, come back, there's your bull market if you want to clarify it that way. Successful support number 1. You break resistance, you support it rather than resist it on the second and few periods. Monstrous move, and now that's the big volatility. We've had one somewhat volatile but lower session. This one here is as well in today's. And to think that it's going to slow down and have anything like these small moves moving forward, most likely not. As we should, within today's session, have big moves where we at least, if we're going to go down, maybe we have enough to come in here. Maybe we retest these highs and continue to going forward, or stay in this little bit of a range in here. But if it stays in a range like this, which would be a low volatile one, well, that's like 39.40 to 36.70, a differential of like that's like a 7-8% move. And when you consider how low a lot of these days before have been, things are just picking up as far as the pace of the game as I look at it. And I'll lead into Bitcoin dominance just for that subject. The fact that these moves that happen in here, as it broke down, altcoins basically moving, cryptos in general, and I don't know what name you want to give this day. It's most certainly brings a continuation of large volatility, to say the least. And this is going to look interestingly weird with these lines because I didn't remove it going to a new time frame once it loads, and sometimes unfortunately it takes a little bit longer. It's been internet, there we go. Internet sometimes can be a little choppy, but been pretty good lately. Anyway, this is an interesting pattern, and let me just hide the volume on something like this. How do I volume? So let's remove the drawings and add some more. What we see in here is an uptrend. Two different ones maybe. You can go this one and this one, because what happened is the rate of ascent from this move has been a little bit better. But you had a little bit of entanglement here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and this is an interesting pattern. So to me, this looks like just high probability is going to fill some of this empty space. But along this empty space, it's just a matter of what has been very low volatility now turning into a little bit more, but it has a long ways to go. It still has to get out of this primary trend, which is sideways. Thus, the likely event, if things ideally go the way I would like them to anyway, or I would think would happen on the situation at least anyway as well, is if this level of support gets violated, which was kind of tested here, not really, but somewhat really, definitely really here, and so definitely here. And now here we are again. This move was from when to when? Well, this occurred in 2019. And this is when Bitcoin went from the lowest end of like 4,000 up to over 12. And amongst such, it obviously overperformed Bitcoin in doing so, and doing it in retracement mode. I say retracement mode because from the retracement back in the days, like 2016 into 2017, it was actually not a surprise for Bitcoin to overperform the altcoins. But then once Bitcoin made all-time highs, breaking 1,000 back then, the altcoins was just dominating, and this is when this market was just crashing kind of deal. And in the situation when, we'll just say the time when altcoins are ready to go, whether it be again when it breaks previous high of 20,000, then the likelihood of something like this can come in. Now, whether altcoins does it in advance and even do it period, those questions will be answered. I think, at least when doing period, a lot of them will. Whether they do it in advance, meaning Bitcoin makes its move up to the 14, 20, 1,000. Well, what do altcoins do on the way there? Do altcoins work around the same area and this just it stays in this type of market it's doing now? Probably not. Does this go down because altcoins kick ass? That's a possibility, where next thing you know, oh, but Bitcoin is up 50%, Ethereum's up 82%, Ripple's up 79%, this blah 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 coin's up 480%, and this one's up 26 times, and of course that's just the way big volatility works. And is it the opposite? Does this thing go way higher? And I think that's definitely in play as well, where you see Bitcoin moving from this and it's 20,000 and we're up 100 and whatever 40%, and what's Litecoin up 35%, 60%, which means it's down against Bitcoin, stuff like that. That could very easily come in place as well. But I think if something like that were to happen, and then Bitcoin starts breaking like 23, 30, 40,000, I think at that stage, just like in 2017, we would have major movements down on the dominance. And we would see spots where, oh, well, Bitcoin was 20,000. What was Litecoin again? Yeah, Litecoin got back to 100 or whatever, or 98 at that stage. Not even less than that, 75 or whatever, 79. Still, the whole point is not as good. And then next thing you know, Bitcoin doubles from 20 to 40, and Litecoin is now 975 or 1,400, and or whatever. These other coin is 4x and 9x and 20x as well, when Bitcoin has maybe a 2x move on making new highs. So those are some of the things that I think about as far as where I think a lot of the direction on how the coins are going to play out. Of course, the market's always going to do what it's going to do. And that'll be it for today's video. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.